chapter number 6. Nehemiah chapter number 6. Nehemiah chapter number 6. I want to read. This is our theme for this year. These are the verses we're using for our theme for this year. In Nehemiah chapter number 6. So this will be the text that we start with. And we're going to jump to another text here shortly in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter number 6, we'll read verses 1 through 3. Verse 3 is our main verse for the year. Nehemiah 6 verse 3 is our main verse that we're going to focus on this year. I want us to read all of verses 1, 2, and 3 to get a good context here. Nehemiah chapter 6 verse number 1. The Bible says, "Now it came to pass, when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had builded the wall, and that there was no breach left therein, though at that time I had not set up the doors upon the gates, that Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But they thought to do me mischief. And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease, whilst I leave it, and come down to you?" Jump down to verse number 15 real quick. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse number 15. "So the wall was finished." Amen. You say, what are you saying amen about? I'll tell you a little bit. It was a work that began, by the way, this is the great work, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the great work that Nehemiah was working on. I picked this thing way before Trump ever started talking about the wall, okay? I am not being political, all right? I'm not saying I'm for or against it, although, well, I think we should, but I'm just saying, I did not pick this for that reason. This has the wall in Nehemiah has nothing to do about the wall. That I'm not trying to be political on this at all. Okay, just need you to understand that I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings, but it is in the Bible, and this is the great work that Nehemiah had been given to do, to build this wall. And it came to completion. All right, so the wall was finished. I like this because Nehemiah didn't quit until the job was done. We need more Christians and more churches to stick with it until the job gets done. You say, when will the job be done? When Jesus comes back. Amen. Right. We don't need to quit. We don't need to stop. We don't need to lower anything. We need to keep holding high the banner of the cross and keep marching forward for the glory of God until Christ comes back. Amen. We see here, so the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month Elul. Notice how many days it took. In 52 days. You're talking about the whole wall around this city. 52 days. You know what that is? Miraculous. Yeah. And that wall was very strong and very sturdy. That they built, we had to rebuild from the stubble and all the trash that was there. To clear all that out. And they had to start over. They had to rebuild the whole wall and start from scratch just about. In 52 days, they built that wall. You know what that is? Miraculous. Now, I noticed in verse number 3, this phrase, and this is our phrase for this year. After Sanballat and the enemies had come to him, he said, I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work. Our theme for this year is doing a great work in 2019. The theme of this, we're going to talk about this month. We've got several different things to discuss and to bring out in the book of Nehemiah. But Nehemiah, we find doing a great work, but how did it get to the finish? There always has to be a beginning. So, how does a great work begin? That's the question I began. How did Nehemiah get to this point where he was able to say, look, I finished this great job. I'm doing a great work. Where do we get to the point that we say, I'm starting a great work? Where can we get to the point to say, here's the great work that we are doing? Do we just jump in and go, look, this is a great work, we declared a great work, so therefore it is a great work? No. Let me tell you why this was a great work for Nehemiah, because it was a calling that God had told him to do. By the way, the church has been given a calling. The church has been given something that we ought to be going out into the highways and hedges, compelling them to come in. We ought to be going out and preaching the gospel to every creature. That's every Christian ought to be doing that. Their church ought to be a part of doing that as well. We've been given something to do, but here's a great work, he says, building this wall. The other question is not only how does the great work begin, which we want to talk about this morning, but how can we see, as Nehemiah did in verse 15 of this miraculous thing, in 52 days this wall was done. How can we, or is it even possible for us to see miraculous results? I mean, the world is getting worse and worse. The Bible says it will wax worse and worse. Can we still, in the year 2019, see God do something great in our midst? Can we see, not just great, miraculous? I believe the answer is yes, we can. Is it possible to see Him? Yes. You say, how can you say yes, it's possible? Because in Hebrews 13, verse 8 tells us that He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That tells me He's the same God that created the earth. It's the same God that we have today. The same God that kept Noah from the flood and protected him and his family and created that ark and preserved the life on ark is the same God we have today. The same God that brought the children of Israel out of Egypt is the same God that we have today. The same God that split the Red Sea is the same God we have today. The same God that brought them in the book of Joshua and defeated all the enemies that they had to conquer is the same God we serve today. The same God that kept the Hebrew boys safe in the fiery furnace is the same God we have today. The same God that protected Daniel in the lion's den is the same God we have today. Amen.
Amen.
And my Bible says He's the same.
Amen.
He has not lost any of His power.
Amen.
Not one time have you ever seen to the point where God says, whew, I've used all my power. I can't use any more.
That's right.
I got to recharge. Not once. Not once. He has the same power today as He did back in the Old Testament. As He did back in the New Testament. As He did back in the Great Awakenings and the revivals that He sent to America and across the world in several places. He's the same God. The problem, by the way, that we have is not with God. The problem we have not with the lack of power we're seeing from God is not Him, but it is us blocking the power of God working through us.
Amen. Yes, that's right.
So my challenge for us in 2019 is to get out of the way and allow God's power to work through us. That means there's going to be some things we're going to have to take care of as individuals, as churches, or as our church. I can't say churches, I'm focused on this church.
Amen.
By the way, when I start preaching, I start about different things don't go well. That church down the road, or this is the church God called me to. This is the church I'm preaching to.
Amen.
If you think I'm preaching at you, well, who do you want me to preach at, right? Amen. You're here.
Amen.
And if you're not here, I'll record it. I'll put it on Facebook, and I'll call you up and say, hey, you need to watch this, so I can still preach at you. Amen. God put you here for a reason. God put me here for a reason. It's for me to be here with you and you to be here to help me. We're here together.
Amen.
But we have got to, as a whole, learn to get out of the way so God can do a great work in 2019.
All right.
How does this begin, though? Well, I always like to start at the beginning. So take your Bibles over to Nehemiah chapter 1. That's a good place to start. Find out how Nehemiah got to this point, where he was able to say, I am doing a great work, and really mean it. Now, we can say I'm doing a great work, but whose great work are you doing? Are you doing God's great work? Or are you doing your own great work? Oh, wait, your great work is nothing. My great work is nothing.
Right.
When we do God's great work, it's everything.
Right.
I want us to read Nehemiah chapter number 1. The Bible says, the words of Nehemiah, starting at verse 1, the son of Hakaliah, and it came to pass in the month Chislew, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace, that Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, And I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. They said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity therein the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned certain days, and fasted and prayed. You'll notice this when we go through this month, and I would challenge you, read through the 12 chapters in the book of Nehemiah, read through that, and the first 9 chapters or so, find out how many times Nehemiah prayed. You'll be surprised when the things that, if you want to see God do something great, it's going to take some fasting, it's going to take some prayer.
Amen.
We've got to get to the point that we realize what prayer will do. It's not only praying for somebody, it is please pray for me.
Yes.
That's what I need. If you really want some power, if you really want some direction, maybe we ought to be willing to give up some of our food, some of our stuff that we count as what we desire, and be willing to fast and pray. That's a New Testament concept, by the way, as well. And that's what Nehemiah did. He fasted and prayed before the God of heaven and said, I beseech thee, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night. Did you catch that? You didn't just pray it once and be done. Day and night. For the children of Israel, thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. Notice when he started confessing the sins, he didn't say, boy, that wicked Israel did really bad here, God. I wish you'd convict them of their sins. What did he say? I and my father's house, we have sinned. He lumped himself into the children of Israel.
All right. Yes.
Isn't it so much easier to pray that someone else will get right with God?
Yeah. All right.
Maybe we should pray that we can get right with God too.
Amen.
Well, yeah, but man, I'm not as bad as. How many times have we said it? If you have to say I'm not as bad as, that's bad enough.
That's right. All right. Amen.
We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments which thou commandest thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, if ye transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. But if ye turn unto me, and keep my commandments, and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost part of the heaven, yet will I gather them from thence, and will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. Now these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power, and by thy strong hand. O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servants, and to the prayer of thy servants, who desire to fear thy name, and prosper, I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. Let's have a word of prayer before going further. Dear Heavenly Father, I've only got a few more minutes, but I pray that you give wisdom and guidance and direction for the next 10, 15 minutes as we try to preach, Lord, according to your will. Help us, Lord, to be willing to step out of the way, to surrender ourselves in 2019. Fully to you, to be willing, Lord, to say, I will do whatever it takes to have the great work done. And Lord, help us to be able to see what it takes. May we be willing to take these steps and be willing, Lord, to obey you. We love you, we thank you, we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. So how do we start? How does the great work begin in 2019? The same way it did in the book of Nehemiah years and years ago. It started with this. Nehemiah got a grasp, and he received some horrific news. It started with some horrific, some terrible news that was given to him. Did you see that? Notice right here. It says in verse number 2 that Hananiah, one of the brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked him concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. Here is the news that he received. And they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction. Not good news. Would you agree with that? Right. Amen. Not good news. Great affliction. Not just affliction, but great affliction. And notice what else it says. And reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. So when all of this began, when Nehemiah saw one of the messengers, one of his friends, one of these people, Hananiah, come to him, and he asked him how everybody was doing in the captivity, and this guy said, man, I'm going to tell you something, Nehemiah, it's not good news. It's really, really bad news. I mean, the people that's over there in Jerusalem, that are in the captivity, they're in great reproach over there. They're in great affliction. They're in reproach. The walls are torn down. The gates are on fire. It's a terrible situation. By the way, church, we need to realize there's some horrific news that we need to realize is true today too.
Right.
See, we always want to talk about all the good things. But there are some horrific news. If we're going to accomplish anything in 2019 and be able to do a great work for God, we have to acknowledge the horrific news that is there today. You say, what is that? I think about the next generation coming up. It's a lost generation. Horrific news. Ladies and gentlemen, I stood yesterday and me and Pastor John was talking. And he said, did you notice, Brother Caleb, the age difference between those who are protesting for what's right and for those who are standing for what's wrong? Did you notice the age gap? See, those of us that were standing now, other than my kids, there were my kids and a couple others, and then everybody else was older, 40 years older. Most of them were 50, 60, 70 years old. We had people in wheelchairs showing up. All the other ones, most of them that I saw and that Brother John saw were college age.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Our generation coming up behind us is in some big problems.
Right.
They're the millennials, but even behind them, the teenage generation, you know what they're called? Are you ready? Generation, well, no, this one, I'm talking about those that are even younger generation, but this is Generation Z. Z. I talked to my young people about that last year. I said, you're Generation Z. I said, I don't know what that means. They're giving up hope on even the next generation doing anything because you're the last letter of the alphabet. Anything else. But the research in Generation Z, those who are about around 13, 14, 15, and younger, right around that age is what I'm looking at. The other one, millennials and all that, so the other ones. I'm Generation X, and then you have the next generation below me, which is the millennials, and then you have Generation Z, is what you have. The generation behind me, millennials, is what we saw out there. They're the ones that's brainwashed. They're in the colleges right now and graduating from high schools and things like this. The ones behind them, Generation Z, according to statistics, they are the most liberal generation. And I'm not talking about just liberal in politics. I'm talking about liberal in ideology and moral standing than any generation before.
True.
You go and you look at the churches today. Most churches that are standing for what is right, you will not find a whole lot of young people in them.
Right.
You say, well, then how do we get young people? Well, here's how some churches do it. We're not taking this route, by the way, but here's how some churches will do it. They will lower their standards so low that it doesn't matter what they wear, what they do. They can hang on each other, they can kiss and make out. Listen, I've been to churches where I've seen that stuff take place. And they let them do whatever they want to, whatever they want to, do whatever you want to. And then you have all these teenagers show up. Woo, yeah, we had 150 young people. Yeah, but out of those 50 of them got pregnant on your youth group. You say, oh, are you serious?
Yes, sir.
I am dead serious.
Amen.
We ought to realize that the next generation coming up, not just the millennials, but Generation Z that I'm working with and the youth pastors I work with today, they're in bad shape. They're in great affliction. The teens of America. And we say, well, I'm glad to see one or two, and I am. And I told the youth group today, the boys in here today, By far, I'm going to brag on my youth group right now. By far, I have the best youth group I have ever worked with. That I've been in the youth ministry. They're the best young people I've ever had to deal with. Really.
Amen.
And a lot of that comes from the teachings they get at home and things like that. But as the youth group grows this year and things happen, we're going to see other kids coming in. And we are, and I'm going to preach about this in a couple of months or so. I want to preach about the warped ideology we have about standards. There's a warped thought process about standards.
Amen.
Standards are good when they're used properly.
That's right.
And I believe they're godly in a church when they're used properly. All right? When they're used properly. I'm not going to get into all that today. We talked about that today in our Sunday school class. And we're not going to lower our standards just to draw in more. We're going to go out and we can reach them. I don't have to be a drunk to win a drunk.
That's right.
I don't have to wear my shorts to go win somebody who can't dress right.
That's right. Right. Amen.
Aren't you glad that's true, church? I don't have to wear my shorts. Amen?
Amen.
Somebody else say amen right there, nowhere else. By the way, I don't have any, But what I'm saying is, the world says, well, we need to dress like them, we need to talk like them, we need to act like them. Nope. Don't have to. I firmly believe I can go into any place wearing this suit. But by the way, I'm buttoned up today. All the way, even with my back on everything. I can go to any place in America in this suit and I can still win people to the Lord. I can still touch people's hearts. I don't have to put on the cut jeans and all that stuff to win somebody. I don't go, yo, what's up, I don't have to talk like that.
All right.
I can win them. It's not the talk and the language you're looking at, it's the heart
Amen. Right.
that they're looking for. They're looking for reality. But our generations behind us, folks, they're in deep trouble.
Right.
That's some horrific news. If something doesn't happen, what will America be like for our teenagers and younger?
That's right.
What will our churches be like for our teenagers and younger? Our generations are in bad shape.
Right.
Not only our generations, but the church has lost its power. We are in a generation today where the churches have, instead of in Nehemiah chapter number 6, where he says, I can't come down, because what they're trying to do is get him to compromise and cease the work. They have ceased the work of God and they've started going to the world.
Right.
And we've lost the power of God. And we wonder, where is the power of God in our churches? It's not that God's power is gone, it's that we've left from the power of God.
Right.
I was vacuuming yesterday. Corbin and I were doing some vacuuming yesterday. We got some things in there. I left the vacuum running. Just left it running. You know what? That vacuum never stopped running. You know when it stopped? When I eventually turned the power off or unplugged the power source. You want to know why there's no power in the churches today? Because we have either turned the power off and we're ignoring what God wants us to do, or just simply unplug from the power source.
Right.
Man.
Church, we've got to get plugged back in. There is no power in our churches today.
Right.
There is no power. They're looking for somebody with power. That's why they're going to all these other ideologies, because they seem to be new. They seem to be more powerful. They seem to have the right. They put on like what Randy said, the fake smiles. Holly told me that little drag queen that went over there yesterday. She was sitting in the van face and she saw him over there before he came walking in. Oh, how you doing? All this stuff that he did, trying to showing his big self and all this and going in. She saw him over there for 15 minutes. She said, well, about 10 minutes. She said, about 10 minutes or so, just standing over there, looking at the crowd. She said, she told me, he was just standing there looking at everybody until he got a group of people to come along with him. He had to build up his nerve to come to where he was at. He put on a fake smile when he walked in. And that's what it is. That's all they can do. But so many Christians, you know how we walk around?
Amen.
Yeah.
And a drag queen. Who do you think they're going to go to, Christian?
My God.
If you have the power of God, if you have God living inside of you? And if you're living a life that you say, well, what's God doing for me? Let me ask you this, what are you doing for God? What are you doing for God? Listen, we have to realize we've got to get plugged back into the power source.
That's right.
We got to walk around, put a little bit of a smile when we talk to people about Christ. Let there be a gleam in our eye about heaven.
Yes, amen.
Because the church has lost its power. That's horrific news. Finally, about this, I may have to put this over the next week before I go any further. We find this, not only the next generation and generations following are in bad shape, but our church has lost its power. And listen to this. Hell is still just as real today as it ever has been.
Right.
I would challenge you. I may find some copies of that book. I would challenge you. When I get done with it, if you want to read it, I'll let you read it. I'll let you borrow. I'll need it back because it's a very powerful book. But there's a book I'm reading called The Lost Person's First Day in Eternity. You know what that book is all about? Hell, the lake of fire. The reality that is there. And the problem that we have as a church, I'm glad that there's a heaven that we can go to. But the problem that we have, church, is we have stopped telling people about the reality of hell. And we ourselves have gotten so caught up in heaven, which is wonderful, that we ourselves have forgotten that God has saved us from an eternal punishment and damnation in the lake of fire forever and ever, where the worm dieth not, where there is no rest, where there is no escape, there is no annihilation, there is only gnashing of teeth, there is terror, there is torment, there is screaming, there is loneliness, there is darkness. The realities of hell, it's not like these little shows portray where they're walking around, there's a little bit of fire here, a little bit. It is a lake of fire with no beach to get off of and to get out to be able to relax on. It is a lake of fire. It burneth day and night. And that place is just as real today as it ever has been. And every person who rejects Christ will spend an eternity in that lake of fire. Amen. And we've lost the reality of hell. We're in bad shape, church. The walls have crumbled. The reproach is there. Great affliction has taken place. There is horrific news that we must realize is true. Let me end with this, and I'll finish the rest of it next week. Let me end with this in verse number 4. When Nehemiah heard the horrific news, notice what he did. And it came to pass when I heard these words that I sat down, and what did he do? Wept, and he did something else. What else? And mourned for certain days. Watch that. Certain days. And fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. See, here's what happens. We hear the horrific news and we'll acknowledge it that yes, that is awful. That's really bad that our generations are coming up behind us. And that's not good that they're going to be lost and they're in a bad situation. And it is really bad the church has lost its power. We really want to get our power back. And it is really sad and really bad that hell is still real and that people are still dying and going there by the second. I hate to hear that. But here's the problem that we don't have that Nehemiah got. When he heard that bad news, he received a heavy burden. Yeah. It was so much for him, he had to sit down. He had to sit down. And then he wept, and he didn't just weep. He began to mourn for certain days. He was grieved to the core. He received a heavy burden in his heart for the news he had just heard. Church, you want to see God do something great in 2019? It's time that we don't just acknowledge the horrific news of the next generations, or the church has lost its power, or the reality of hell. It's time that we sit down. It's staggering. That we realize how staggering the truths are that we've just acknowledged. Amen. And that we weep over the next generation. We weep over the lost power of the church. We weep over those who are dying and going to hell. And that we mourn for them. We say, God, give us back we're not careful, we'll be just like the church of Laodicea. They were self-focused. I have everything I need nothing else. I'm rich, I've got this. And they didn't know they were naked and destitute and had nothing. And the churches are the same way. And church, if we're not careful, we'll do the exact same thing. I've heard it said time and time again, and I believe it. God is doing a great work here. But I would say this, have we caught the burden? Do we have a heavy burden for the lost of our community? Do we have a heavy burden for the next generation? Do we have a heavy burden for those who are going to hell and receive and are going to spend eternity in the lake of fire? Do we have a heavy burden to receive the power of God once again? Because it changed the way he responded. The sad fact is this. We'll hear a message preached about the reality of all these things. And we'll feel bad, we'll have a burden, we'll walk out these doors, and we'll flick it right off. I'm sorry, but Nehemiah didn't do that. You need to realize, church, that God is able to deliver. He's able to finish the finished work over there at the wall being built. Started when Nehemiah got a heavy burden. When he received the horrific news, got a heavy burden. And then next we're going to talk about his prayer. His earnest prayer that he prayed. But church, we need to start with this. Where's our heavy burden? We need to say, Lord, help me to realize the reality of the horrific news. And help me to get my eyes off of myself and what I'm going through and all the things that I'm facing. And help me instead to realize about the next generation, about the church, and about those who are lost and what they're going to face. Listen, if I lose everything in this earth, I've still got heaven. If I lose my wife and my kids and everything, I've still got heaven. If the richest person over in the county that's lost, that has everything they want, and they gain the whole world, and they die, they have nothing but the lake of fire to look forward to. Where's our burden, church? We have turned our eyes to ourselves.
Yes, amen.
And it's time to get our eyes off of self. And we ask God, Lord, give me the burden. Help me to see the reality of the horrific news that we've just received. When I went down there yesterday, it changed all my perspective. Because I saw the reality of the horrific news. I remember, let me end with this story. Yesterday, I was standing there holding the sign at the very beginning. When these guys came up, he didn't have it. The ones that were with us, we had signs. The other ones had a little badge that said something about story time or whatever. This guy didn't have anything on. He walked up and goes, which side's the good side, which side's the bad side? And so there was a couple ladies over here that had a little story. They were not with us. They were trying to push us out of the way. And so they said, they're the bad side, we're the good side, is what they said. And so then he came over here where I was. And I was standing on the end with the kids right here next to me. And he looked at me. So we ought to hate that guy up there because he's a drag queen. We ought to hate him, right? Because he's wicked, he's evil. We ought to hate him. You know what I said? We're all sinners. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We ought to go be his, and I'm not going to use the word he used, because of who he is, right? We ought to go do that. Listen, we're all sinners. But the gift of God's eternal life to everyone. So everybody can be saved. Even the drag queen can be saved. So everybody can. But what are you here for? I said, read the messages on the sign. That's why we're here. So we ought to just be all able, and the ladies over there are like, yeah, because when they read, so they're no longer kids. I ignored their statement because that wasn't even logical. And they said that. And they said, no matter whether you're gay or straight, we're all sinners, right? And nobody, I said, exactly. Because for all have sinned comes for the glory of God. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. I just kept quoting Romans 3:23, Romans 6:23. About 3 minutes. You know what they found out? They can't argue with the Bible.
Right. Amen.
They can't argue with the Bible. He had to turn and find something else to do, and he had to leave us alone. And those 2 ladies left. They left. You say, I don't know what to say when somebody comes up and they try to be mean to me. I'll tell you what to say, because I did it yesterday. If you can't think of anything else, for all have sinned, come short of the glory of God. But what is it? But the gift of God is not offered Jesus Christ our Lord. Everybody can be saved.
That's right.
They can't argue against the Bible. You don't have to fall in the trap that they try to set for us. And I saw others, and Corbin saw them too, as we were standing there. One guy came down and he said, I can't stand, I can't hardly stand, I can't take being around these Jesus people. You know why? It's a conviction he saw walking down with all the signs, and he walked out of there as fast as he could. It's a sad thing that the church has lost its power. I saw more power in the church yesterday than I have in years. Just because we came together in unity for one thing. But church, when are we, as Oak Grove Baptist Church, going to catch a vision? And not just a vision, more than a vision, catch the burden of those who are lost and dying and going to hell around us. When are we going to start weeping and mourning for our next generations coming up behind us? When are we going to start fasting and praying for the power of God in our church again? When are we going to get to the point that we stop saying, you're right, Pastor, we ought to do that? When are we going to get to the point we stop saying something and start doing something, church? We've got to take action. I don't care if you do just weep and mourn. At least do something. But it's time we acknowledge and realize the horrific news that's truth. And say, Lord, give me a heavy burden. Everybody bow your heads and close your eyes this morning. Nobody's looking around.